Hello, I'm Tom Reed. I teach media literacy here at Swampscott High School, and I'm here today with some of my excellent students. We want to start by thanking Mr. Dillette and his TV production students for giving us this opportunity to tell you about our program. It's connected to a growing media literacy movement throughout the country in which schools help students develop their critical thinking skills for use especially with the internet and modern media that have such profound effects on them. But in this class, we offer a strong film studies component, mainly because I used to be an English teacher, but I've become convinced over the years that students can get as much or more out of watching a great film and exploring their reactions to it as they can out of reading great literature. Our typical format is to watch a film together, all together as a group, usually takes 2 full periods. Then students go home and write not only their ideas about it, but their feelings. And then they come back the 3rd day and we share it in a full period discussion. I sometimes also then offer assigned reading for further reading from film critics. So what I'm hoping my students will do today is give you some sense of what exploring their reactions to film has meant to them. We're going to start over here, and you can also maybe tell us what you're planning to do after Swampscott. They're all seniors from the class of 2019. So Maddie?
Hi, I'm Maddie Fouts. I'm going to be attending Northwestern University next year. I plan on studying economics and possibly taking on a second major in history.
And Noelle?
I'm Noelle Erickson, and I'll be studying at Lehigh University next year, and I'll be studying business.
And Sophie?
I'm Sophie Jeffries. I'm going to be studying at Bennington College in the fall, and I'm going in undecided.
Thanks. And over here, Harry?
Hi, I'm Harry Katz. I'll be attending Stanford University in the fall, and I'm very excited to be going in undecided.
And Meredith?
Hi, I'm Meredith. I'm going to be studying journalism at the University of Maryland next year, and then possibly throw in like political science or something like that.
And Logan?
Hi, I'm Logan Hill. I'm studying ecology and conservation at the University of Waikato down in New Zealand.
So I asked Logan if he would go next for the next segment. In this segment, I asked each student to name at least 1 or 2 films that they've watched in media literacy classes that have meant something to them. And I know, Logan, you've got a very interesting story about what watching one of our films meant to you. Maybe you could explain the film too, and then how it influenced you.
Yeah, so the film that really influenced me during media literacy was a film called 3 Idiots. It's a Bollywood film that centers around 3 college students who are studying engineering. And one of the main themes of the film is that you should pursue what you love in life. You shouldn't get a job that just pays well or that your parents want for you. You should pursue something that you'll actually enjoy and will mean something to you. So when I saw this film, before seeing it, my plan was to go into accounting because I had this idea that I wanted to make a lot of money early on in life and then retire early. But after seeing this film, it occurred to me that this really wouldn't make me happy and that I wanted to do something that meant something to me. So I got to thinking about it, and I realized that being a park ranger would work really well for me because I love nature and just being outside and exploring wilderness and stuff like that.
And how did you end up deciding to go to New Zealand?
Well, most of my extended family is from New Zealand, and it's a very ecologically focused country. It has a heavy emphasis on nature and stuff like that, so it just makes sense.
Great. And recently in a student presentation, which we'll tell you about in a few minutes, he showed us a film from New Zealand that I think almost everyone seemed to enjoy. Okay, thanks. Meredith, you've mentioned that you're interested in journalism. Do you mean traditional print journalism or broadcast journalism?
No, broadcast, yeah.
And what's one or two films that have influenced you in this class?
There are so many films that have influenced me, but the one I wanted to talk about today was actually Get Out, or more broadly like Jordan Peele's stuff, because Swampscott, you know, no offense or anything, but it's not a super diverse town. And, through, especially with Get Out, through kind of that lens and, just this kind of entertaining horror movie, but also something that, it has so many, deeper meanings. I think it helps me as someone who, is part of a community that isn't very diverse. It helps me understand what they experience, what people were experiencing outside of my community and how it affects them.
That's great. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotations is from the film critic Roger Ebert, who said that, you all know what I'm going to say, right? That movies are a machine for generating empathy. That sounds like Get Out did that for you. Great. Without any spoilers, have you seen Us?
Yes.
Is it as good?
Yes. I
looking
love Jordan
forward to
Peele.
it.
It's like amazing to me how someone could hop from just like amazingly hilarious comedy,
Like Obama's anger.
yeah,
translated, right?
which is amazing, and then go to something like so just horrifying and so, but also so amazing at the same time.
So, again, no spoilers because I haven't seen it, but which would you think I should show next year to my students? Get Out, or should I show them Us?
That's so hard. I would say if you're looking for like more of a conversation about, you know, like race, you probably would want to go for Get Out. But if you want just a discussion about overall humanity and, you know, what makes people people, go for Us.
Nice. Thanks. So, Harry, what about you?
When the first time that I took a media lit course, it really did kind of feel a bit like being thrown into the deep end of the pool. But
Oh, come on. This
No,
is a
no,
guy
no.
who took 6 AP classes.
But I would say that one of the most significant films that I think I watched with you was probably Network, which is a film in which, it's hard to describe in a few words, but it's really a very satirical look at what happens when the news becomes about what pays and what sells instead of what might actually be morally significant. And I think that it's so important because it asks us to look for empathy in our news. It asks us to look really for people who care, and it tells us that the news can still be accurately reported even though a reporter has emotion, even though a reporter doesn't, there's no one out there who can pretend to deliver the news without somehow caring about whatever issue is at hand. And I think that in an age where, you know, sources, I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it, but in an age where we try to ask for impartiality from our news, sometimes it's much better to have a source who admits that they're biased, but will still try to report the truth than one who claims to be impartial and it goes on to tell outright lies. And, you know, it's not like, well, I won't call out any news station in particular, but
Why don't we
think
go
you all know who
towards
we're
the
asking
positive
for.
approach? Tell me
Yeah.
somebody that you like that's either in broadcast journalism or in media that you think gives you a relatively fair and intelligent look at the news.
I would say that I like a lot of BBC reporting. In general, it seems like they do make a very concentrated effort to, whether it's through interviews or whether it's actually when somebody is reporting on the issue at hand, to bring in experts just to either interview the person about the subject material or to talk about the news. And I think that that's always worthwhile because it's a way to really fact check on the spot. You don't let your subject get away with lying and using, you know, one of the largest news outlets in the world to do it. You ask them hard questions on the spot.
Great. I wanted to ask you one other thing while I think of it. When we were all talking about where we are going to college, and by the way, this is not about the play Hamilton. This is my alma mater, which I thought I would bring on the set as well. So when you were talking about that, you said undecided, and
Yeah.
happy to be undecided.
Yeah.
I know you as someone who's really interested in politics, but undecided in terms of how to approach politics, or you might end up doing something entirely different.
I mean, it might be too early to say. I think that I probably will go into politics because I can't really ignore it. I don't mean that in the sense that people who don't care about politics are somehow worse, just in the sense that I personally, the household I've been raised in, just the amount of news I try to read, I feel like I can make a difference, and I want to try to make that difference, but I want to do it in such a way that it either combines with one of my interests at hand, whether it's going off and writing for a candidate as a speechwriter and being able to use my interest in English, or whether it's actually campaigning for myself. I'm not sure yet.
Great. Well, I would vote for you, Harry. All right, so let's turn it over to Sophie.
So one of my favorite films that I've watched in Media Lit is The Graduate, for many reasons. I think one of them is that I sort of, and I mean not really, but there are some parts of Benjamin that I can sort of relate to in the way that he really just does not know what he wants to do in his life and like what he wants his future to be even. And I think that's sort of like similar to myself in a way, because like I'm going into college and I want to explore a bunch of things, but I don't know exactly what I want to do. And I also think that the film is just really interesting with its storyline. Like it's just really different. So
Yeah, and it brings up the issue that it's sometimes easier to decide what you're against than what you're for, and where you're going. Great. Yeah, that's a pretty popular film with a lot of my students. And I know that when I was asking you what film you wanted to talk about, you also thought of Three Idiots.
yeah.
Say a little more about, because that's one of the only films that's so popular, and I think it's got such a great message, as Logan said. I actually show it in 2 different classes. So say a little more about that.
So I've seen Three Idiots very many times, and I really agree with like following your dreams and like what makes you happy should be what you want to do for your career as well. And then success will follow you. But I also think one of my favorite messages in Three Idiots is the whole all is well. So, I mean, if people haven't seen Three Idiots, like there's this whole part where one of the main characters, like his whole mantra is all is well, like no matter what happens, like you just have to tell yourself like all is well. And I think that really spoke to me because, I think everyone can sort of get up in the clouds and get really worried about things, but just telling yourself all is well, I think is a really good message. And because everything is okay, like really, even if things may seem hard. So I like that a lot.
Thank you. Very nice. So, Noelle, what film would you like to talk about?
I'd like to talk about Cinema Paradiso because that was probably one of the most impactful films I've ever seen, because it really looks at like life and how it starts and how it ends and kind of like everything in between. And I just think it's really powerful to watch a life unfold and just follow the relationships. And it's not like the fastest moving movie, it's kind of like slow and you're just following this boy's life. And I just think that is really powerful, and it kind of made me think about like my life as a whole instead of just being like trapped in this mindset of like now. I think it's also important to think about kind of the big picture of life, because it is short and it's hard to know where you're going. But this movie really helped me to think about like what's most important in life, which is, in my opinion, like relationships and love. So that movie really helped me to see that.
Yeah, I love it too. Yeah. I have to say that it's a film that gets a mixed reaction. Some of my students find it a little slow. For some of them, it's one of their first times reading subtitles.
Yeah.
But so I have moved it up to a more advanced class. But in that class, almost everybody. Plus, it's a great tribute to the movies.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because it has the film aspect of how powerful film can be. Yeah.
All right, Maddie.
So I'm a little different in the sense that I picked a film. I love the film I picked, which is The Shawshank Redemption, but I actually chose to show this film as a student presentation rather than being introduced to it. I had already seen it and was introducing it to other people. So, I mean, I love this movie because I'm a huge Stephen King fan, and I love a lot of his scary stories, but this one just has so much focus on humanity and the meaning of life. And the only really scary part of it is sometimes how cruel people can be to each other, but I love the film's positive message about, holding on to hope and how, important people in your life can get you through hard times. But I think this film impacted me the most when I showed it in class, because I love that I was able to maybe help other people see that or find a film they were really passionate about. And student presentations has become one of my favorite aspects of media literacy since I've showed a few other films and TV shows now.
Yeah, why don't we talk about that at this point a little more, maybe more of an open-ended discussion. Right now I'm offering 6 classes because I'm adding an unusual one, Media and the Election, that I'll be offering for the next 2 years as the primary season and then the election unfolds. But normally there's 5 classes, and one of them is called Student Presentations. Actually, I'll give you a little history. The first class I taught was called The History of the Movies, the first time I tried media literacy while I was also teaching other subjects. I started with it starts with the silent film era, and it becomes a kind of cultural history. We go through the silent era, the Depression and World War II, and watch Hollywood studio era classic films, then into the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and where we watch experimental films that kind of reflected all the change at the time, and then up to the present. And then I had the idea to ask, does anyone want to show any of their favorite films? I expected they'd all be modern films, and they usually are, but not so much. So all of my courses now end with a couple different student presentations, plus I have an entire course. I think one of the purposes of this video is to tell middle school students that they should take media literacy when they get here. So you should hear about the student presentation course. So why don't you tell them more about what student presentations are?
Sure. So I've done student presentations in the context of the course that's specifically focused on them, as well as just doing them as a TA or a student who just really wanted to show a film that I liked. So typically, you come up with a proposal to show that you have honestly put some thought into it and aren't just saying, oh, I just want to show this film because I like it. No, maybe it has meaning to you, or you just think it could spark a really interesting discussion. Personally, my favorite time I've seen student presentations was during the course, focused on student presentations. I took it last year, and it was just such a great group of people who really just wanted to talk about their thoughts on films and just exchange ideas with each other. And I think we all learned a lot about each other going in as relative strangers for the most part, because preferences in art and film are just so personal and revealing. I just thought it was really incredible to get to know people that way.
Yeah, one of the things, I didn't necessarily plan this right away, but over the years I've realized one of the things students like most in these classes, since we have such long full period discussions about whatever comes up, is getting to know each other in a way they might not, as well as developing confidence in their public speaking. You said something about that earlier this year, about how just having discussions helps you.
Yeah.
Can you say a little more about that?
Yeah, I think in all the classes I've had in media literacy, I mean, when I first started taking it, I was a bit more shy and I didn't really want to, express anything of myself that I thought people would judge or anything. But I think as time moved on, I've definitely become more open, and I think that that's something that's really important to have in high school, and I don't really feel like I have that in most of my other classes, is that openness to share. And I think that's a way that I learn a lot about other people that have been in my media literacy classes that I wouldn't have known.
Yeah, as well as knowing more about yourself, because you have to figure out what you
Yeah,
believe
exactly. Yeah, I think that is a big aspect of it. Watching films sort of reflects yourself in that way. So,
so many other teachers have to teach a set curriculum. I'm really lucky. There's no MCAS, there's no AP test hanging over our head, so every class can be a little different. One of you mentioned teaching assistant role, and I do want to mention that because it's another opportunity for growth. And in fact, all 6 of you have been teaching assistants for me. Can someone want to talk a little about what the teaching assistant position is?
I'll talk about it. So this is this last semester of high school is my first time being a TA. And I never would have wanted to do that before this year. But it's been really cool kind of being able to be in front of a whole class and talk about what I'm interested in, and feeling confident to share my ideas. So, and also helping you with tests, multiple choice questions. I mean, I don't know, it's an interesting experience.
Yeah, and the TA usually does the first student presentation, and she did The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, also about a whole life. So we started to see a trend in your taste.
Yeah.
And the format in class is that the TA and I sit at 2 desks at the front of the room, and then there's 6 couches in a semicircle with 3 people on each couch, so I tell guidance 18 is the maximum. And the TA helps me, takes notes so that I can remember what was done for the relatively small number of tests, and also helps me facilitate the discussion. And we do go around the room. I do want to say, as Sophie was saying, I think one reason it helps students develop their confidence in speaking is, all of you have been in classes or seen classes where there's only a few really engaged students who do most of the talking, but not in media literacy class, because we go around the room. And it might sound a little formulaic, but when the first person to talk, other people can jump in. But I just make sure that by the end of the period, everybody's talked. And I've actually had students tell me, Shelby was just telling me this, that she really liked that I call on her, because in other classes she sometimes worries about whether she's going to be the person who raises their hand, and she knows she's going to have a chance to say something. So that's the kind of format that we use, and it seems to work well. Other classes, one class I want to mention is the political class coming up for the next 2 years. You took the first one, Meredith. Can you say a little about the 2016 media and the presidential election course?
Yeah, so I was actually really lucky to be in a class that was pretty actually divided and had a lot of different viewpoints. So basically we would watch either a piece of media, or we would talk about, a debate that had happened the night before, and we would just, throw around ideas to each other. We talked about, gun control, abortion, marijuana, like all of it. And I think it actually really helped me kind of, because I always knew that politics mattered to me, but I never really knew what exactly were the issues that did. And especially with recent events, I think it's really important for kids to figure out what they believe in, what issues matter to them. And so I say, definitely take this class, please do it, because it's so awesome. And you get to, I would never have talked to someone who was a Trump supporter if I didn't take that class. And, even though I don't necessarily agree with their ideas, there's so much you can learn about the other viewpoint that maybe you didn't think about before.
All right, so I think we're running out of time. I had a couple extra open-ended topics I guess we won't get to, but we can all talk about it later. One was, what's the future of movies? David Denby wrote a book called Do Movies Have a Future? Are you guys all going to end up watching films on tiny screens while you multitask? Or I hope this film helps still give you a sense of the power of watching it and the pleasure of watching it on a big screen with a lot of your friends. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank the crew again. In fact, I particularly want to thank Isaac, who's on camera 3, because if he were out here, he would be telling you about why Dr. Strangelove is such a great film. So, and I like that film a lot too. So, any last words? Anything that the kids who are coming up in Swampscott should know about this class?
Just take it. It
Yeah.
just makes you just
Yeah.
a whole person. It just
Yeah.
you think you know yourself, you don't. Just take it.
Yeah.
You'll find out so much about just everything in the world around you and yourself, and it's awesome.
Go ahead.
I think that media literacy is a class that asks you to care. And it isn't always necessarily on the same subject. People aren't necessarily going to agree with you, but it is a class that's going to ask you to care. And I think that, when you're dealing with classes that you're required to take just for the fact that you need to graduate, having a class that asks you to care and that wants you to put more into it and that wants you to put yourself within the conversation and not just discuss the material on the screen is really important.
Thank you. Well, thanks to all of you. Thanks to whoever's watching, and see you later.